Welcome to Jackie's 26th podcast, April 26, 2025, and we're rolling.
Hello, my name is Jackie Geringer McDermott, and we are recording live from the English Valley History Center in North English, Iowa. This diary was written by my great-great-aunt, Mary Elizabeth Claypool Wade, who was known as Libby Wade. Here's a picture of Aunt Lib with her granddaughter, Hazel Cobb. We will read and talk about a couple weeks in the diary and then switch to happenings around the History Center and feature stories. November 16th, 1946. Had some cards from Dale today. Colder with snow predicted. It's cloudy. I was in bed most of the forenoon. Hattie was here and washed dishes, etc. Her mother is not very well either. I have a sore place in my side. Wonder what's next. Dale Bishop was a neighbor kid, I think, who was sending her postcards from the service. I'm going to check on that more for sure later. Hattie Newberry was her 55-year-old neighbor who had come back from living in Cedar Rapids to care for her 79-year-old mother, Clara Newberry, on the left side of this picture, who is also not well today. November 17th, 1946, Sunday. That is all Libby wrote today. She must have been really ill today. November 18th, 1946. Mr. Cray here starts to Texas tomorrow. Had Dr. Miller come down. Had a little temp. A little congestion on my lungs. Gave me sulfa, etc. Made me feel weak but helped the cold. Jenny was here in the PM. John Cray was the father of Libby's son-in-law, Richard Cray. The Richard Cray family has a farm/citrus orchard in Texas. Dr. L.A. Miller Sr., Old Doc as we called him, in this picture board, was making a second house call on this illness that Libby has. Jenny Wade is Lib's daughter-in-law, the wife of son Wayne or Perky Wade. And they live a block away. November 19th, 1946. I was in bed all day. Had lots of callers. Today, if we were that ill, we would likely limit our visitors. November 20th, 1946. Lena came down to look after me and the work. Jenny and the girls went to CR. Judy is not very well, has a cold and is wheezy. I was up most of the day. Warren and the girls were here for dinner. Warren, or Mike Wade, is Libby's second son. In this picture, his wife is Lena, and their girls are 4-year-old Judy and 15-year-old Phyllis. This picture was taken a few years later. Since Lena is there to care for Lib and the housework and the meals, Mike and the girls join them for dinner. Libby always calls her children by their given names, not their nicknames. Libby's youngest son, Russell, or Tyler Wade, was likely there too, as he lives there. Jenny and her daughters might have gone to Cedar Rapids to shop or on other business. November 21st, 1946. Jenny was here most of the day. I was up and down. Not very good. Such misery in bowels. Judy is better. November 22nd, 1946. Jenny was here most of the day, doctoring me and doing the work. She and Evelyn's are planning on going to Texas soon. Daughter-in-law Jenny and her daughter Evelyn and husband Wayne Kurtz and daughter Suzanne are planning a trip to go see Lib's daughter Anna and family in Texas. Libby is really ill. November 23rd, 1946. Jenny here a while in the AM. Phyllis came in the PM. I'm better, but not very good yet. Evelyn and Suzanne were here. It's Mrs. Kurtz's 52nd birthday. Phyllis is Lib's 15-year-old granddaughter, the daughter of Mike and Lena Wade. Mrs. Kurtz was Evelyn's mother-in-law that was 52 years old. Evelyn was still in her 20s. Suzanne is Evelyn's 4-year-old granddaughter, and here's her senior picture. Sunday, November 24th, 1946. Belva and Baby were here. Wayne and the others went to Missouri for horses. My parents were married on this date in 1859. This little book has been neglected for a week or so. Had a little congestion in my lungs. Took sulfate, etc. Felt pretty punk. Followed by an obstruction of the lower bowel. I'm better now. Belva Yoss, Lib's granddaughter, and her baby. Mick Yoss, who was in the class of 1964, came to visit. Libby's oldest son, Wayne, or Perky Wade, has trucks. So he went to truck some horses to Iowa. Went down to Missouri to get them. Libby's parents are Jonathan and Ann Mariah Claypool, and they're the older folks in this picture on this side. Jonathan and Ann Mariah Hinkle Claypool were also my great-great-grandparents. And Libby's right here in the center of the picture. Her brothers and sisters are all older than her. November 26th, 5th, 1946. Was alone most of the day. I'm better now. Jenny was here a while in the evening. She is nearly sick and had done a big washing. Hattie was over in the evening. Russell and Hill went someplace to get a turkey for Thanksgiving for Hill. The oil barrel was filled. The family heated the house with fuel oil, which was stored in a barrel outside the house and delivered by a delivery truck. November 26, 1946. Russell went to CR. George Hornick came at noon and got some coal in and potatoes from the cellar. Lena was here a while. Booster class meets at Mrs. Gunther's this p.m. Would like to go, but I'm not able. Got a card from Ruth Ott. Russell often goes to Cedar Rapids on business for the Home Lumber Company where he works. George Hornick was Russell's friend and the son of a school teacher named Mrs. Hornick. I assume they also heat some with coal that would have been stored in the cellar along with the potatoes. Booster class is a church group from the local Methodist church. Ruth Ott was the sister of Jenny Wade, Lib's daughter-in-law. She got a card from her today. November 27th, 1946. Mary brought me 2 hens, 11 pounds at 21 cents a pound. Hattie dressed them and took them to the locker. Jenny and Lena were both here a while. Maud in the p.m. Turkey Day in town, 40 to be given away. A nice day, a big crowd in town. Hattie probably jumped in to help with preparing the chickens for the locker because they all knew Libby had been very sick. One of the big promotions in North English was Turkey Day, when turkeys were given away, likely to entice shoppers to town on the day before the holiday, and as an appreciation to the regular shoppers. November 28th, 1946. Had a letter from Anna. Richard went by plane to Lima, Ohio. A very nice Thanksgiving day. We are to go to Wayne's for dinner. We went. All of their family were home. Had a big turkey and all to go with it. Evelyn brought me home at 11 p.m., pretty tired. Daughter Anna and son Richard Cray, who are on this side of this picture, live in Texas. Son Wayne and wife Jenny and their children all live a block south on East Clark Street. All the children are married now except for Harold, and they have 2 grandchildren, Sue Kurtz and Mick Yoss. So here's Jenny and Wayne, and over here's Hazel Cobb, and up here's Stub Wade, or Harold, and over here is Bud, or Walter Wade, and here is Evelyn Kurtz, and there's Belva Yoss. November 29th, 1946. Russell went to Cedar Rapids. Hattie was here in the a.m. Bertie, Mary R., Maddie Bell, and Mrs. Prandy were here in the p.m. Jenny drove Russell's car to Sigourney. Mrs. Carson, Belva, and Frida went. Mildred Cox, Mr. Carson, Anna Leslie, and Mary Lewis, and Honey Butler are all in the Sigourney Hospital. Bertha was also here a while. Again, Jenny drove Russell's car, and they carpooled to Sigourney to see people in the hospital. Bertha Claypool Geringer was my maternal grandmother and Libby's niece. November 30th, 1946. No snow yet this year. Most everyone is through husking. Waynes are shelling and hauling corn. Jenny was here a while. She and Wayne and Evelyn and Suzanne are to start to Texas in the morning. Heard tonight that Bertie Costello died Thursday evening. It is the end of November, and harvest is just ending in those days. Son Wayne and his workers were heavily involved with shelling and hauling corn. I think she is saying that Jenny and daughter Evelyn and her husband Wayne Kurtz and daughter Sue are going to be in the car for Texas, but I found a cute article about Wayne and daughter Anna in Carl Hogendorn's column in the North English Record. Perky Wade says he is working all summer to make money enough to go south for the winter. And down in the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, he has a sister who will work all winter long, so she'll have enough money to come north next summer. And I thought that was really cute, and just to show us how much Carl was involved with everyone in town. Bertie Costello, whose real name was Bridget Costello, would have been an acquaintance of Libby's from when the family lived in Parnell. Bertie had a store in Parnell for many years. That is the end of the diary portion for this week. The English Valley History Center promotes the rich history of the communities within the river valleys of the North and Middle and South English rivers. It encompasses an area roughly served by the English Valley School District, from Deep River to near Parnell and from Watcher to Kinross. This also includes the communities of Millersburg, North English, Webster, and South English. Please send donations to the English Valleys History Center, P.O. Box 70, North English, Iowa, 52316. Corrections and additions from last week. Last week during my broadcast, I was a mixed up mess. Too many Easter activities. I mixed up my sentence that should have said, Libby's daughter Anna lives in Texas and granddaughter Belva Yost lives a block away. I also said that Lib's nephew Ray Claypool was in World War II, and that should have been World War I. You might remember last week, Dave Jackson had just gotten the mail, and he brought me a letter from Jerry Westfall from Missouri when I was recording. Jerry sent a generous donation, and we thank her for that. Jerry says, Dear Jackie, I really enjoy your podcasts. I know so many of those people you speak about, and the family stories are very interesting. This picture was taken during the centennial in Miller Hardware, which was the first building south of the locker that was owned by the Johnsons. You have spoken about many of them, and Wilbur Cray might be one of your great aunt's relatives. I don't personally know Lib Wade, but I heard about her often during Rebecca Lodge meetings since I was also a member. I'm going to give you some of my early memories of North English, but it's not necessary to read them all. Save some for when you are including them in your broadcast sometime. I am 88 and surely not the oldest listener you have, so these may stir some memories for others. Thank you again, Jerry, and we will hear more from you in the future. Now, you have to remember that none of these men had beards. It was because this was the centennial in North English that they grew them. In the picture are, starting on this side, Glenn McKinstry, who was the son of Libby's buddy, Bertie Mahanna McKinstry, and I've not found a picture of her yet. And then Carl Johnston. Carl was married to Daisy Cobb and the father of Jerry Van D. I know him so well because I started working with them at Don and Jerry's Cafe when I was 14 years old. Wayne Baines is next. He was married to Eva Harris Baines and was the father of Lyle Baines, Larry Baines, and Irene Blaylock. The next is Alva Allen. He was married to Atha Butler from the Butler family, and we have talked about that before on this broadcast, as she was the sister of Gail Claypool and Roy Butler and Addie Kirkham, among others. Wilbur Cray was the next, and he was married to Neva Cray, who was later Neva Burdine and lived on Bolin Avenue in the little green house when I knew her. They were the parents of Dorothy Blount and of Johnette Hudson from Keswick. Wilbur Cray was the brother of Libby's son-in-law, Richard Cray, who has moved his family to Texas in Libby's diaries. And then we have Joe Westfall, who was married to May Lockridge Westfall. Joe was Jerry Westfall's father-in-law and the father of her late husband, Lee Westfall, and his siblings, Connie Esser Helen Popham, Harley Westfall, and Larry Westfall. And then there's Bill McKenna from the Kinross area, who was buried out at St. Patrick's Cemetery at Little Creek. And then Ira Harris, who was married to Leela Lockridge Harris and was the father of Stan Harris, Arlene Clark, Dorothy Sampson, and our cowboy friend from South English, Dick Harris. I also visited with Winston Claypool, who came to my broadcast last week. He has lived in North English most of his life, and he is a couple years younger than Jerry Westfall. They both served on city volunteer committees when they owned businesses on Main Street. Winston is one generation older than me in the Claypool family, as he is Libby's great-nephew, just like my dad was, and I am a great-great-niece. Winston would have been an adult when Libby passed away. He thinks that the garage that Russell Wade built was east of the Miller Hardware Implement Building. Winston remembers that Libby's washing machine was on the back porch and that she received most visitors in the living room. He has invited me out to his house to look at pictures, and I might just be doing that very soon. Also, I wanted to mention when I took the picture of the 1952 aerial photograph of North English that hangs on the wall here, I was able to isolate Libby's house, which I showed you a couple weeks ago, and I found something else interesting over here on Southeast Street, right here in the picture. You might remember that we think that is Perky Wade's corn sheller and a straight truck. You might remember that Libby's son Wayne, or Perky Wade, was somewhat of an entrepreneur. He had straight trucks to haul stuff and corn shellers to shell corn and grain elevators, and hired people to shovel corn and drive trucks for him. That memory sparked another memory from Dan Best, who was on our History Center board, that I had forgotten about. Libby's grandson, Harold or Stub Wade, farmed and also worked for his dad, Perky, most of his life. I knew Stub well because he was in the restaurants uptown for many meals. In later years, the corn shelling equipment was parked on an empty lot on Boland Avenue, and the kids played on or around it. Dan Best says that later, Harold, or Stub Wade, traded Rick and Mary Lou Ayers for that lot. Harold wanted his house shingled, and Rick and Mary Lou wanted to put a house on that lot at 215 North Boland Avenue. Since it worked to take a picture with my iPhone camera of one of the area pictures in North English, I decided to try another picture to see if I could get a better view of Lib's house on that one. And sure enough, here's the picture of the garage that Russell had built in 1946. It's pretty light, but you can see right there is the Miller Implement Building, and right beside it is Russell's garage. It is hidden by the Miller Implement Building in pictures from the west looking east, but from the south looking north, there it is. And I also noted there are several large shade trees on the east side of Libby and Russell's lot. All those trees are gone now. Our featured story this week is Scott Romine's bus trip. Jimmy Scanlon and the Kellers. Scott Romine, who was Mr. Romine to his students for many years at English Valleys as a teacher, and Scott, to those of us from the History Center, started school back in the early 1950s. This story was written by Dave Jackson, the president of the History Center board, and the author of a wonderful book about the Hinkletown area, which was north of Kinross and east of North English. Please listen while I read excerpts from Dave's story from 2010 in the English Valley Star newspaper. This story takes a roundabout way of getting to the point, and it must be prefaced by the fact that the Hickory Ridge School at Hinkletown closed its doors forever in 1949. Prior to that was the era of the Independent School District, better known as the country school for those in rural areas. When the Hickory Ridge School closed down, there were 6 remaining students. At the beginning of the first term, there were 10. Johnny O'Rourke, Wayne Chapman, and Joyce Martin Molander were the big kids. All the rest were pretty much the little kids. These were Margaret and Karen Goody, better known as the Goody Girls, Larry Martin, Gail Netzer, Ron Chapman, Pat O'Rourke, and Harold Chapman. The following year, 1950, the remaining students from Hickory Ridge became part of the Kinross Consolidated School District. No longer in the comfort of their little country school, they had to ride the school bus to the booming metropolis of Kinross. For those kids, the world suddenly got real big. Sometimes the bus left Kinross and went straight north, driven by Charlie Troyer, and traveled about 10 miles round trip. Some of the other drivers over the years were Houston Back, Junior Yates, and Elvin Schaefer. When the bus headed north out of Kinross, one of the first stops right after the Webbers, Schaefers, and Berkeys was the Blaylock home, and on came Pat, Mike, Gary, and Karen. Sometimes the bus started east on the first road north of the highway. Enter Mr. Romine. For those who always thought our beloved teachers were simply born old teachers, I hate to break the news that Mr. Romine was actually a little kid at the time, just like the rest of us. Back to the purpose of this story, depending on which direction the school bus took, Mr. Romine might have been either one of the first or the last to board or depart the bus on a given day. Either way, the bus would pick up young Scotty Romine and the Blaylock kids, as previously stated, and head up through Liberty Township, winding around to collect up, in no particular listed order, the Stutzmans, Dickie Joe Miller, Murphys, McKennas, Pecks, Webbers, Kathy Hollingsworth, Kathy Snediger, the Cecil Ballards, Bonnie, Mary Della, Christine, Dwayne Wade, the Cobbs, John and Golda, and up over through Little Creek, sometimes picking up the O'Briens, and over to Hinkletown, where it picked up Gail Netzer, the Scanlons, John, Mary, Rita, Kathleen, Maureen, Cecilia, Jim, and Teresa Murray. And then the Goody Girls over at the Gray's house, and then headed back towards Green Valley, turning again south on the T Road. It was at that point at Hinkletown, at the Scanlon home specifically, that Mr. Romine remembers seeing guineas out picking around in the road each day. I remember guineas from down in Kansas, and the only thing I recall about them was that they were always on the road picking in the gravel and always getting run over. It got me to wondering why the Scanlons raised guineas and what their purpose was on a working farm. And I wondered if the Scanlon kids remembered anything about their guineas. What I know about the Scanlons is that they lived in the old Hinkle house, built in 1861, right next to where the old Hinkle General Store was a hopping place of activity in the 1860s and 70s. Neither the house nor the store is there today, but the exact spot is beneath a long, tall woodpile setting at the edge of Lynn Moffat's driveway. The Scanlons lived in the Hinkle house after the Pophams, and then the Roberts family from the early 1950s until 1979. They raised guineas there for much of that time. So I picked up the phone and called my best Scanlon resource, Jimmy Scanlon, down at South English. "Oh yes," Jimmy responded right away. "We had guineas along with chickens, cows, and hogs. Dad had the guineas to take care of the potatoes, and they would run up and down the rows and eat up all the potato bugs. They were great at that." According to Jimmy, sometimes the guineas and chickens would all be out in the front yard picking around for bugs in the grass, what there was, and then the clouds would start brewing and churning and the sky got real dark to the southwest. It was the kids' job to catch up the chickens and guineas before the storm hit. On one such occasion, a real humdinger of a storm was coming up quick, and they got them all put up, except the big rooster. Every time we went after him, he'd run the other direction, said Jimmy. And finally, the wind was so bad we had to get to the house, so we just left him out there. The kids all piled into the house and went to the windows under the front porch, looking out at that rooster in the middle of the front yard, which was standing firm and braving the elements that the fury of Mother Nature was sending his way. Jimmy continued. All at once, a big bolt of lightning came down and hit that rooster. It happened so fast that all we saw was feathers flying in every direction, and all we found afterward was a pile of charred feathers. Aside from the rooster story, at least I figured out now what guinea fowl had a place on the farm back in the days of before the days of field pesticides, and now again on the organic farms that are cropping up around the area. Back on the bus. Back to the days of young Mr. Romine and the school bus in Kinross. When they hit the T intersection east of Hinkletown, they turned south, and the first place was the Kellers. According to a few who rode that bus, it seemed like the Kellers had 16 or 17 kids. And when that bus stopped there, it would fill up quickly as those kids filed on the bus one by one. Most remember it was just one heck of a lot of kids when they stopped at the Keller place. Continuing south, they stopped at Murphy's and Kessel's, somewhere down around the old Elsie Thurman farm. Then they swung around Smeltzer's Corner and stopped at Ivan and Ruby Miller's place, and then on up Hanley Hill, where they went south again, picking up or dropping off the Ballards, Dwayne Wade, the Peck Kids, Stuffsmans, Scotty Romine, and others, perhaps Marlene Whirl, and sometimes the Rugg Kids south of Highway 22. Hanley Hill was one of the more interesting pieces of geography, being much steeper than it is today. Gary Blaylock remembers that in addition to being the ultimate sledding hill during his growing up years, the hill was a good place for the school bus to get stuck. Sometimes it was real hard for the bus driver to get up that hill from the south in the winter, Gary said. And on at least one occasion, they did get stuck. We had to get pulled out. Mr. Romine recalls one time the bus broke down on the way home and all the kids piled into the nearby Newman house and watched American Bandstand on one of those newfangled television sets. At any rate, the bus ride took about 40 minutes each direction on a normal day. Although young Mr. Romine lived about a mile from the Kinross school, and he could have walked to school in much less than half the time, he recalls that he chose to ride the bus because he enjoyed all the conversation along the way. Lucky for us, Mr. Romine, even today, some things don't change. Which brings me to the Keller family, which was my mother's family, who lived north of Kinross in the 1950s on Scott Romine's bus route. Here's a picture of my grandparents, John and Gladys Vandy Keller. And here's a picture of 16 of their 17 children. The family lived west of North English in a house on the paving that has since been torn down, that we called Mom's birthplace because it was in ruins for many, many years. And then on the Bonneter place out near Ritter School, where Diane Bonneter lived growing up after the Kellers moved away. Grandpa did farm work and Grandma was a homemaker. The second child was a girl named Marion, who passed at age 2 from pneumonia before my mom was born. The older children all attended Ritter School and then transferred into North English for high school. Kenneth, who's in the back row, and my mother, she's on this side. And Carol, all graduated from North English. They attended Ritter School and then transferred into North English for high school. And then the Kellers moved to Williamsburg to work at Elwood's Farms. And Glenn graduated from Williamsburg High School. He's right there in the back. Then in the 1950s, they moved to a house near where Grandpa worked for Thurman's in their dairy barn in the Hinkletown area. That house no longer exists, but Dave Jackson says there's a stack of bricks on the edge of the property. The Keller children were on Scott Romine's bus route then, and Scott remembers that some of the boys playing on a baseball team at that time. Francis graduated from Kinross in 1955. And here's his picture in this right here, composite. The reason I'm showing this picture is because these class composites were revived by a group here at the History Center and sent to the Keokuk County Historical Society in Sigourney to be housed. I also sent a copy to Francis's widow, my Aunt Nancy, who lives in Cedar Rapids. Francis had 2 sons, Dan and Steve. Dan is a faithful listener of my broadcast. Then the Keller family moved on to Harper, where Grandpa was the custodian at the school, and Doris and Dorothy and Karen graduated from Harper. They're the twins in this picture, and Karen's in the back behind them. Daryl, Johnny, Mary Kay, Gary, Eldon, Kevin, Bobby, and Richard finished their school elsewhere. And here's the only other picture of the Kellers together after Francis had already passed away. This was at my grandparents' 50th anniversary in 1977, and the 15 remaining children were in attendance. Correspondence this week. Sue Oliver Cheney said, "Thanks again for another great episode, Jackie. You're doing an amazing job at keeping history alive. I'm sure Mom and Dad are smiling that the old stereo has come full circle." Mark Claypool said, "Jackie, sometimes I go back in my mind to when North Main Street was booming with businesses. And each week you were always reminding me of the wonderful people that made this all possible. Yes, Mark, I have often said that the old-time North English runs like a movie in my head. I am so glad to be able to have the opportunity to do this broadcast each week. Debbie Vandy Bombi commented on the picture of Dorothy Fobert and a friend, thinking it might be Regina Johnson. But we think maybe it's Lorraine Johnson Hanchett, because she was a cousin closer in age to Dorothy. Roberta Vocal from Millersburg stopped by the History Center. She is one of my faithful listeners, and she is related to me on the Schaffner side. I am definitely going to do a story on my great-great-grandpa, Henry Schaffner from Millersburg, this fall. I also ran into Louise Ballard Davis, who also graduated from the class of 1966 at Bingo this week. She is a listener, and we talked about my upcoming programs. I also heard from Ron Van Berkom, former History Center board member who now lives in Wisconsin, and he said, I finally listened to this one. Always good. If you have any pictures that you would like to share of anyone we have featured or anyone from an upcoming program, please let me know. I'd also like to mention that the next English Valley Alumni Luncheon at Bryant's in the Williamsburg Mall will be held at 11:30 a.m. on April 28th, which is Monday. Please contact Alice Stramer or Linda Carter for reservations. I plan to be there, and I hope you can be too. Our condolences this week to the family of Tom Chittick from the English Valley class of 1963. Please see the nice tribute to him on the EV graduates page. Our thoughts and prayers go out this week to the family of Margaret Campbell Osweiler from the class of 1977. May you rest in peace, Mag. We also lost John O'Rourke from the English Valley class of 1964. John was such a fun guy, and he was so kind and so comfortable to be around. Our sympathy to his wife, Kathy, from the class of 1968, and the rest of his family. There's a flyer on the EV graduates page if you need more information about the alumni reunion on July 26th. And there'll be a program tomorrow afternoon at the History Center about the Neighbors magazine, which is published in Sigourney by my friends Cece and Rhonda Hoffman. It starts at 2 p.m. And we got an acquisition here just a minute ago. It's from Callie Dennison, and she sent it in with Carolyn Elwood. It's a tree slice postcard from Alba Humphrey to Minnie Walsh with a 3-cent stamp. That's really unusual. I never saw anything like that before. And it's got writing on the back, too. That's how they knew it was from. That is really strange and different. If you have anything you would like to donate to the History Center, please contact Dave Jackson, Scott Romine, or any board member. We'll see you next week.